In an era defined by globalization and interconnectedness, the resurgence of state power has taken many by surprise. Gone are the pronouncements of a borderless world, replaced by a new era of geopolitical competition. At the heart of this shift lies a powerful financial instrument, the sovereign wealth fund. These state-owned investment vehicles, once the domain of oil-rich nations, have proliferated across the globe. From Beijing to Riyadh, governments are leveraging vast pools of capital to advance their economic and geopolitical interests. These funds, often seeded by surpluses from commodity exports or foreign exchange reserves, represent a formidable force in the global economy. They hold stakes in strategic industries, finance infrastructure projects, and exert influence on international markets. Their rise reflects a changing world order, one where states are increasingly assertive in pursuing their national interests. The United States, long the champion of free markets and private capital, has viewed this trend with a mixture of suspicion and apprehension. American policymakers have warned of the risks posed by state-controlled entities, particularly those with opaque governance structures. Yet even as Washington sounds the alarm, a chorus of voices within the U.S. is calling for the creation of its own sovereign wealth fund. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and share it. Also, check the links in the description for more information. In February of 2025, President Donald J. Trump, in a move that surprised many, signed an executive order to establish the first ever U.S. sovereign wealth fund. The announcement sent shockwaves through Washington and beyond, igniting a fierce debate about the role of government in the American economy. Trump, known for his unorthodox approach to policymaking, argued that a U.S. sovereign wealth fund was long overdue. He pointed to the success of other countries such as Norway and China in utilizing such funds to generate wealth and advance national interests. The proposed fund, according to the Trump administration, would invest in a range of domestic projects, from infrastructure development to cutting-edge medical research. Proponents argue that the fund would create jobs, boost economic growth, and restore American competitiveness on the global stage. The proposal, however, was met with immediate and fierce opposition from a broad coalition of critics. Democrats decried it as a dangerous expansion of government power, while fiscal conservatives warned of the risks associated with government-directed investments. Some question the constitutionality of such a fund, while others expressed concerns about its potential for politicization. The debate over a U.S. sovereign wealth fund cuts to the heart of a fundamental divide in American society. On one side are those who believe that the government should play a more active role in the economy, directing investments and shaping strategic industries. They point to the challenges facing the U.S., from crumbling infrastructure to rising inequality, as evidence that the free market alone is insufficient to address the nation's problems. On the other side are those who view government intervention with deep skepticism. They argue that such a fund would be vulnerable to waste, fraud, and political interference. They believe that the private sector, driven by the profit motive, is better equipped to allocate capital efficiently and generate economic growth. The debate is further complicated by the unique challenges facing the U.S. economy. Unlike many countries with sovereign wealth funds, the U.S. operates with significant budget deficits. This raises questions about how such a fund would be capitalized and whether it would divert resources from other essential government programs. As the debate rages on, one thing is clear. The proposal to create a U.S. sovereign wealth fund has ignited a national conversation about the role of government, the future of the American economy, and the country's place in a rapidly changing world. To comprehend the magnitude of President Trump's proposal and the ensuing debate, it's crucial to first grasp the concept of a sovereign wealth fund. In essence, a sovereign wealth fund, or SWF, is a state-owned investment fund, a pool of financial assets managed separately from the nation's official reserves. These assets can range from stocks and bonds to real estate, precious metals, and even private equity investments. Unlike traditional central bank reserves, which are primarily held for currency stabilization and short-term liquidity, SWFs are designed for long-term investment and wealth accumulation. The origins of sovereign wealth funds can be traced back to the mid-20th century with the establishment of the Kuwait Investment Authority in 1953. However, the past few decades have witnessed an explosion in their number and size, fueled by a confluence of factors. Surging commodity prices, particularly for oil and natural gas, have generated massive surpluses for resource-rich nations. At the same time, globalization has led to increased capital flows and interconnectedness in the global economy. As a result, countries have sought new ways to manage their foreign exchange reserves and invest their wealth for future generations. SWFs have emerged as a powerful tool for nations to leverage their financial resources and achieve strategic objectives. Sovereign wealth funds serve a variety of purposes depending on the specific goals and circumstances of the country in question. One primary function is to stabilize national budgets and provide a cushion against economic volatility. For countries heavily reliant on commodity exports, SWFs can act as a buffer against price fluctuations, ensuring a steady stream of revenue even when commodity markets are weak. In addition to stabilization, SWFs are often used to invest in long-term economic development projects. This can include investments in infrastructure, education, healthcare, and technology, all aimed at boosting productivity, creating jobs, and enhancing the overall well-being of citizens. Furthermore, SWFs can play a role in promoting national champions and securing access to strategic resources. By investing in key industries or acquiring stakes in foreign companies, governments can use SWFs to advance their economic and geopolitical interests. This strategic dimension of SWFs has often been a source of controversy, particularly in Western countries where state intervention in the market is viewed with suspicion. From the oil-rich nations of the Middle East to the export powerhouses of Asia, sovereign wealth funds have become a global phenomenon. Norway's government pension fund, Global, the world's largest SWF, stands as a testament to the transformative potential of these funds. Built on the back of Norway's oil revenues, the fund has amassed a portfolio worth over $1.7 trillion, investing in a wide range of assets across the globe. Similarly, China, with its massive foreign exchange reserves, has established a network of SWFs to manage its wealth and pursue strategic objectives. The China Investment Corporation, established in 2007, is one of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, with a mandate to invest in a diversified portfolio of assets, both domestically and internationally. These examples highlight the growing influence of SWFs in the global economy. As these funds continue to grow in size and scope, they are likely to play an increasingly important role in shaping the global investment landscape and influencing the balance of economic power in the 21st century. Norway's government pension fund, Global, often hailed as the gold standard of sovereign wealth funds, stands as a testament to long-term vision and prudent management. Established in 1990, the fund was designed to manage Norway's vast oil wealth for the benefit of current and future generations. Unlike many countries that squandered their resource windfalls, Norway opted for a responsible and sustainable approach. The fund's mandate is clear: to safeguard Norway's wealth by investing in a globally diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, real estate, and renewable energy infrastructure. What sets the Norwegian model apart is its unwavering commitment to transparency, ethical investment, and rigorous governance. The fund operates under strict ethical guidelines, excluding investments in companies involved in controversial activities such as tobacco production, weapons manufacturing, or human rights abuses. Its investment decisions are guided by a long-term perspective, prioritizing sustainable returns and responsible stewardship of assets. The fund's success is undeniable. With assets exceeding $1.7 trillion, it has become a global financial powerhouse, owning on average 1.5% of every listed company worldwide. Its returns have consistently outperformed global benchmarks, providing a significant source of revenue for the Norwegian government and securing the country's long-term economic prosperity. China, with its meteoric economic rise and massive foreign exchange reserves, has emerged as a major player in the sovereign wealth fund arena. Unlike Norway's single, monolithic fund, China has adopted a more diversified approach, establishing a network of sovereign wealth funds with distinct mandates and investment strategies. The China Investment Corporation, founded in 2007, is the country's largest and most prominent sovereign wealth fund, responsible for managing a significant portion of China's foreign exchange reserves. The China Investment Corporation's investment portfolio spans the globe, encompassing stakes in publicly listed companies, private equity, real estate, and infrastructure projects. While the fund's primary objective is to maximize returns, it also plays a role in advancing China's strategic interests. This includes securing access to critical resources, supporting the internationalization of Chinese companies, and promoting the use of the Chinese yuan in global trade and finance. In addition to the China Investment Corporation, China has established several other sovereign wealth funds with specialized mandates. The China Africa Development Fund, for example, focuses on investments in African countries, while the Silk Road Fund aims to finance infrastructure projects along the Belt and Road Initiative. China's growing network of sovereign wealth funds reflects the country's ambition to leverage its financial might to secure its economic future and expand its global influence. The oil-rich nations of the Persian Gulf, long synonymous with vast energy reserves, have also become major players in the sovereign wealth fund landscape. These countries, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Qatar, have amassed enormous wealth from decades of oil and gas exports. Seeking to diversify their economies and invest for a future beyond fossil fuels, they have established sovereign wealth funds to manage their surpluses and pursue strategic objectives. The Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, established in 1976, is one of the world's oldest and largest sovereign wealth funds. With an estimated asset base of over $800 billion, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority invests in a wide range of asset classes, including equities, fixed income, real estate, private equity, and infrastructure. The fund's long-term investment horizon and conservative approach have earned it a reputation as a prudent and sophisticated investor. Similarly, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, under the ambitious Vision 2030 plan, has undergone a dramatic transformation. Once a relatively passive investor, the Public Investment Fund has become a key driver of Saudi Arabia's economic diversification efforts. The fund is investing heavily in sectors such as technology, tourism, and renewable energy, aiming to reduce the kingdom's dependence on oil and create a more diversified and sustainable economy. While sovereign wealth funds around the world exhibit a wide range of investment strategies, governance structures, and risk appetites, they share a common thread: a desire to leverage national wealth for the benefit of present and future generations. Whether it's Norway's focus on long-term sustainability, China's pursuit of strategic assets, or the Gulf states' diversification efforts, sovereign wealth funds represent a powerful tool for nations to navigate the complexities of the global economy and secure their economic future. As the global landscape continues to evolve, marked by geopolitical shifts, technological advancements, and climate change, the role of sovereign wealth funds is likely to become even more prominent. Their investment decisions will shape industries, influence markets, and impact the lives of billions around the world. Understanding the motivations, strategies, and potential consequences of these powerful financial actors is crucial for policymakers, investors, and citizens alike as they navigate an increasingly interconnected and competitive world. President Trump's call for a U.S. sovereign wealth fund in early 2025 sent shockwaves through Washington and reverberated across the global financial landscape. Never before had the United States, a nation built on the principles of free enterprise and private capital, contemplated the creation of such a powerful instrument of state-directed investment. The proposal, unveiled with Trump's signature blend of showmanship and defiance, immediately became a lightning rod for controversy, exposing deep divisions within American society about the role of government in the 21st century. Trump, known for his unorthodox approach to policy making and his penchant for bold pronouncements, argued that a U.S. sovereign wealth fund was not merely desirable, but essential for restoring American economic dominance. He pointed to the successes of nations like Norway and China, which had leveraged their own sovereign wealth funds to generate wealth, secure strategic assets, and enhance their global standing. The U.S., he declared, could no longer afford to stand on the sidelines as other countries utilize such tools to gain an advantage in the global economic arena. The proposed fund, according to the Trump administration, would be seeded with a combination of government funds and, more controversially, revenue generated from the lease or sale of federal assets. This immediately raised concerns among critics who viewed it as a backdoor attempt to privatize national treasures, or conversely, feared it would lead to increased government control over key industries. The debate, once ignited, refused to be contained within the halls of Congress, spilling over into the public sphere and igniting passionate arguments on both sides of the political spectrum. Central to the debate over President Trump's proposed U.S. sovereign wealth fund was the contentious issue of its funding mechanism. Unlike countries with established sovereign wealth funds, often built on surpluses from commodity exports or foreign exchange reserves, the United States faced a unique challenge, a persistent and substantial national debt. This fiscal reality cast a long shadow over the proposal, raising questions about the fund's viability and its potential impact on an already strained federal budget. The Trump administration, seeking to allay concerns about adding to the national debt, proposed a multi-pronged approach to capitalize the fund. One avenue involved redirecting a portion of existing government revenue, such as tariffs collected on imported goods or royalties from energy production on federal lands. This approach, however, immediately ran into opposition from lawmakers who argued that such funds were already earmarked for central government programs, or in the case of tariffs, could spark retaliatory measures from trading partners. Another, more controversial proposal involved leveraging federal assets to generate revenue for the fund. This could include selling government-owned properties, leasing mineral rights on federal lands, or even privatizing certain government-run enterprises, while proponents argue that this would unlock the value of underutilized assets. Critics countered that it amounted to a fire sale of national treasures, potentially benefiting short-term political interests at the expense of long-term national wealth. Beyond the contentious debate over its funding mechanism, President Trump's proposed U.S. sovereign wealth fund sparked intense discussion about its investment priorities and their potential impact on the American economy. The Trump administration, seeking to garner public support, framed the fund as a vehicle for revitalizing key sectors, boosting American competitiveness, and creating jobs. They argued that by strategically investing in areas like infrastructure, manufacturing, and technological innovation, the fund could reverse decades of decline and usher in a new era of American prosperity. Infrastructure emerged as a central focus of the proposal, reflecting President Trump's long-standing emphasis on rebuilding America's crumbling roads, bridges, airports, and energy grids. Proponents argued that the fund could provide the massive capital infusion needed to modernize these critical systems, creating jobs in the process and enhancing American productivity. They pointed to the success of countries like China, which had used state-directed investment to build world-class infrastructure as a model for the U.S. to emulate. Beyond infrastructure, the Trump administration also envisioned the fund playing a key role in revitalizing American manufacturing, a sector that had experienced significant job losses and factory closures in recent decades. By investing in advanced manufacturing technologies, supporting research and development, and providing incentives for companies to reshore production, the fund, proponents argued, could help bring back manufacturing jobs and restore American competitiveness in the global marketplace. Underlying President Trump's proposal for a U.S. sovereign wealth fund was a deeply held belief that the United States needed to assert greater control over its economic destiny. Trump, throughout his political career, had railed against what he perceived as unfair trade deals, currency manipulation by foreign competitors, and the loss of American jobs to globalization. The proposed fund, in his view, represented a powerful tool for reclaiming American economic sovereignty and ensuring that the nation's wealth was used to benefit its own citizens. The fund's investment strategy, as envisioned by the Trump administration, would prioritize domestic projects and industries, reflecting a protectionist bent that had become a hallmark of Trump's economic policies. This America First approach, while appealing to some who felt left behind by globalization, raised concerns among others who worried that it would stifle innovation, discourage foreign investment, and ultimately harm the U.S. economy by isolating it from global markets. The debate over a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, therefore, transcended mere economic policy, delving into fundamental questions about America's role in the world, the balance between government intervention and free markets, and the very definition of national interest in an increasingly interconnected global economy. As the debate raged on, it became clear that the proposal, regardless of its ultimate fate, had unearthed deep divisions within American society, forcing a national conversation about the country's economic future and its place on the world stage. Proponents of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund argued that its establishment could unlock a powerful new engine for national growth, injecting much-needed capital into critical sectors and revitalizing the American economy. They envisioned a strategic investment vehicle guided by a long-term vision capable of tackling ambitious projects that had long languished due to political gridlock or a perceived lack of private sector interest. This, they argued, could usher in an era of renewed prosperity, creating jobs, boosting productivity, and restoring America's competitive edge in the global marketplace. One of the most compelling arguments in favor of a US SWF centered on its potential to address America's pressing infrastructure needs. Decades of underinvestment had left the nation's roads, bridges, airports, and water systems in dire need of repair and modernization. A dedicated source of funding, proponents argued, could break the cycle of neglect, allowing for transformative infrastructure projects that would not only improve daily life for Americans, but also enhance the efficiency and competitiveness of the U.S. economy. Beyond infrastructure, proponents saw a U.S. SWF as a catalyst for revitalizing American manufacturing. By investing in advanced manufacturing technologies, supporting research and development partnerships between universities and businesses, and providing incentives for companies to reshore production, the fund could help bring back manufacturing jobs, strengthen domestic supply chains, and reduce reliance on foreign imports. This, they argued, would not only revitalize a key sector of the economy, but also enhance national security by reducing vulnerabilities associated with dependence on foreign sources for critical goods. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and share it. Also, check the links in the description for more information. A key argument advanced by proponents of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund centered on its potential to promote long-term thinking and intergenerational equity in a political system often characterized by short-term electoral cycles and partisan gridlock. They argued that a professionally managed fund operating with a long-term investment horizon could transcend the limitations of annual budget cycles and make strategic investments in areas like education, scientific research, and renewable energy that would yield dividends for generations to come. Unlike politicians beholden to short-term electoral pressures, a US SWF, proponents argued, could prioritize investments that might take years or even decades to generate returns, but would ultimately secure America's long-term economic prosperity and global competitiveness. This could include funding groundbreaking scientific research, developing new energy technologies, or investing in human capital through education and workforce training programs. By taking a long view, the fund could help address some of the most pressing challenges facing the nation and ensure a brighter future for generations to come. Moreover, proponents argued that a US SWF could serve as a valuable tool for intergenerational equity, ensuring that the benefits of economic growth are shared more broadly across generations. By investing a portion of the nation's wealth in a diversified portfolio of assets, the fund could generate a steady stream of revenue that could be used to fund social programs, reduce the national debt, or invest in future generations. This would represent a departure from the current trajectory where future generations are often saddled with the costs of present-day consumption and underinvestment. As the global economy has become increasingly characterized by the rise of state-owned enterprises and sovereign wealth funds, particularly in countries like China, proponents of a US SWF argued that the United States could no longer afford to remain on the sidelines. They argued that the absence of such a tool left the U.S. at a disadvantage in competing for strategic assets, influencing global markets, and countering the growing economic and geopolitical clout of nations that had embraced state-directed investment. China, in particular, had emerged as a major player in the global economy, leveraging its vast foreign exchange reserves and its network of state-owned enterprises and sovereign wealth funds to secure access to critical resources, acquire stakes in foreign companies, and expand its influence in developing countries. Proponents of a US SWF argued that the US needed a similar tool to counter China's growing economic might and protect its own strategic interests. Furthermore, proponents argue that a US SWF could serve as a valuable tool for promoting American values and interests abroad. By investing in projects that align with U.S. foreign policy objectives, such as supporting democratic governance, promoting human rights, or combating climate change, the fund could advance American soft power and demonstrate global leadership. This stood in contrast to the often opaque practices of some foreign sovereign wealth funds, which critics argued were used to advance narrow national interests or even undermine U.S. economic and security objectives. Beyond its potential economic benefits, proponents of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund argued that its establishment could signal a renewed commitment to American leadership in the 21st century. By embracing a bold and innovative policy tool that had proven successful in other countries, the U.S. could demonstrate its willingness to adapt to the changing global landscape and reclaim its position as a driver of global economic growth and technological progress. Proponents envisioned a U.S. SWF as a catalyst for innovation, investing in cutting-edge technologies, supporting entrepreneurship, and fostering a culture of risk-taking and creativity by providing patient capital and a long-term perspective often lacking in the private sector. The fund could help nurture emerging industries, accelerate the development of new technologies, and position the U.S. at the forefront of the global innovation race. Moreover, proponents argued that a US SWF could serve as a powerful symbol of American confidence and ambition on the world stage. By demonstrating its commitment to investing in its own future, the U.S. could inspire confidence in its economic prospects and attract investment from around the globe. This, in turn, could create a virtuous cycle of growth, innovation, and prosperity, cementing America's position as a global economic leader for generations to come. Despite the allure of a powerful tool for national advancement, the prospect of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund immediately raised a chorus of concerns, particularly among those wary of expanding government power. Chief among these concerns was the specter of political manipulation, the fear that such a massive pool of capital could be wielded for partisan gain rather than the national interest. Critics, drawing upon historical examples of government mismanagement and cronyism, argued that a US SWF would be vulnerable to the same forces that had plagued other government initiatives, potentially transforming it into a slush fund for political favors or a tool for rewarding allies at the expense of sound investment principles. The U.S. political system, characterized by its intricate web of competing interests, lobbying efforts, and electoral pressures, seemed particularly susceptible to such risks. Critics argued that even with the best intentions, a U.S. SWF would inevitably be subject to intense scrutiny and pressure from lawmakers eager to steer investments towards their districts or constituencies, regardless of their economic viability. The potential for pork barrel spending where projects are funded based on political expediency rather than merit loomed large in the minds of skeptics who feared that a US SWF would simply become another avenue for political patronage. Furthermore, critics pointed to the potential for a US SWF to become entangled in the partisan battles that increasingly defined American politics. They argued that investment decisions, rather than being guided by sound economic principles and a long-term vision, could become pawns in a larger political game, with different parties vying for control and seeking to advance their ideological agendas through the fund's investment portfolio. This, they argued, would undermine the fund's credibility, erode public trust, and ultimately diminish its potential to achieve its stated goals. Another major concern raised by critics of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund was its potential impact on the nation's already precarious fiscal situation. The United States, unlike many countries with established sovereign wealth funds built on surpluses, faced the daunting reality of chronic budget deficits and a rapidly growing national debt. Critics argued that creating a new investment fund, particularly one envisioned to be as large and ambitious as President Trump proposed, would inevitably require significant upfront capital, placing further strain on an already overstretched federal budget. While proponents argued that a U.S. sovereign wealth fund would eventually generate returns that could be used to reduce the national debt, critics countered that such a scenario was far from guaranteed. They pointed out that even the most successful sovereign wealth funds experience periods of losses and volatility, and that relying on future investment returns to address current fiscal challenges was akin to building a house on a foundation of sand. Furthermore, they argued that the very act of creating a new fund, even if initially capitalized through asset sales or other means, could send a negative signal to credit markets, potentially leading to higher borrowing costs for the U.S. government and exacerbating the national debt problem. Beyond the immediate impact on the national debt, critics also raised concerns about the potential for a U.S. sovereign wealth fund to crowd out private investment. They argued that by entering the market with such massive buying power, the fund could distort prices, reduce investment opportunities for private investors, and ultimately stifle innovation and economic growth. They pointed to historical examples of government programs that had unintentionally hindered rather than helped the very sectors they were designed to support, arguing that a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, despite its proponents' best intentions, could have similar unintended consequences. At the heart of the debate over a U.S. sovereign wealth fund lay a fundamental philosophical divide about the role of government in the economy. Proponents, often aligned with a more interventionist approach, argued that the government had a responsibility to actively shape the economy, directing investments towards strategic sectors and ensuring that the benefits of growth were shared more broadly. They pointed to the limitations of the free market, particularly its susceptibility to short-term thinking and its inability to always address broader societal needs as justification for a more active role for the state in guiding economic development. Critics, on the other hand, adhered to a more laissez-faire philosophy, arguing that government intervention in the market was inherently inefficient and prone to unintended consequences. They believed that the private sector, driven by the profit motive and guided by the invisible hand of market forces, was far better equipped to allocate capital efficiently, foster innovation, and generate sustainable economic growth. They argued that a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, by its very nature, would inject political considerations into investment decisions, potentially leading to misallocation of resources, market distortions, and ultimately a less dynamic and innovative economy. Furthermore, critics pointed to the inherent tension between the long-term investment horizon, often touted as a benefit of sovereign wealth funds, and the short-term political pressures that inevitably influence government decision-making. They argued that while a U.S. sovereign wealth fund might be established with the goal of making strategic investments that would yield long-term returns, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to insulate the fund entirely from political pressures. Elected officials facing re-election campaigns and beholden to special interests might be tempted to prioritize short-term gains or favor projects that generate immediate political benefits, even if such decisions ran counter to the fund's long-term investment strategy. Beyond the concerns about political manipulation, fiscal sustainability, and the proper role of government, critics of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund also raised a series of more specific concerns about its potential economic impact. One recurring fear was that the sheer size and scope of the proposed fund, combined with its access to government resources and its mandate to invest in strategic sectors, could create significant distortions in the market, leading to unintended consequences that could ultimately harm the economy. One concern was that a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, by entering the market with such massive buying power, could artificially inflate asset prices, particularly in sectors targeted for strategic investment. This could create asset bubbles where prices become detached from underlying fundamentals, leading to eventual market corrections that could have ripple effects throughout the economy. Furthermore, critics argued that the fund's presence in certain markets could discourage private investment as businesses become wary of competing with a government-backed entity with seemingly unlimited resources. Another concern was that a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, by directing investments towards specific sectors or companies deemed strategically important, could inadvertently pick winners and losers in the market, stifling innovation and distorting competition. Critics argued that government bureaucrats, however well-intentioned, were ill-equipped to make such judgments, and that the market, through the decentralized decision-making of millions of investors, was a far more efficient mechanism for allocating capital and fostering innovation. They feared that a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, by attempting to outsmart the market, could stifle the very dynamism and entrepreneurial spirit that had long been hallmarks of the American economy. As the debate over a United States sovereign wealth fund raged on, a diverse array of experts, economists, and policymakers weighed in, offering a range of perspectives on the proposal's potential benefits, risks, and complexities. While some expressed cautious optimism, highlighting the potential for such a fund to address pressing national challenges, others voiced deep skepticism, cautioning against the unintended consequences of government intervention in the market and the inherent risks associated with politicizing investment decisions. Nobel laureate economist Paul Krugman, known for his advocacy of government intervention in times of economic crisis, acknowledged the potential for United States Sovereign Wealth Fund to fund essential infrastructure projects and promote long-term investments in areas like renewable energy and education. However, he expressed concerns about the fund's potential to become a vehicle for political patronage and questioned its viability given the United States' already substantial national debt. The idea of a sovereign wealth fund isn't inherently bad, Krugman noted, but the devil is in the details. And those details matter a great deal when you're talking about an entity with the potential to wield so much financial power. Former Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin, a staunch advocate for fiscal discipline and market-oriented solutions, expressed deeper skepticism, cautioning against the risks of politicizing investment decisions and the potential for a United States sovereign wealth fund to distort markets and crowd out private investment. While the goals may be laudable, Rubin argued, history has shown time and again that governments are generally not very good at picking winners and losers in the marketplace. We have a vibrant and innovative private sector that is far better equipped to allocate capital efficiently and drive economic growth. As the United States grappled with the potential implications of creating its own sovereign wealth fund, experts often looked abroad for lessons from countries that had already traversed this path. The experiences of Norway and China, two countries with vastly different political systems, economic structures, and approaches to sovereign wealth management, provided valuable, albeit contrasting, case studies for policymakers and analysts to consider. Norway's government pension fund, global, widely regarded as a model of transparency, accountability, and long-term investment, stood as a beacon of what a well-managed sovereign wealth fund could achieve. Built on the back of Norway's oil and gas revenues, the fund had amassed a staggering $1.7 trillion in assets, investing ethically and profitably in a globally diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and real estate. Its success, experts noted, stemmed from its unwavering commitment to professional management, its insulation from political interference, and its clear mandate to prioritize long-term returns and intergenerational equity. China's approach to sovereign wealth, embodied in entities like the China Investment Corporation, presented a stark contrast. While the China Investment Corporation had achieved significant financial success, investing in a wide range of assets globally, its operations were often shrouded in secrecy. Its investment decisions influenced by political considerations, and its mandate often blurred between maximizing returns and advancing China's geopolitical interests. This model, experts cautioned, raised concerns about transparency, accountability, and the potential for state-directed investment to distort markets and undermine fair competition. Beyond the economic and financial considerations, experts emphasize that the success or failure of a United States sovereign wealth fund would hinge on a crucial factor: its governance structure and its ability to maintain independence from political interference. This, they argued, would require a delicate balancing act, ensuring that the fund had the autonomy to make sound investment decisions based on professional judgment while remaining accountable to the public and aligned with the broader national interests. One of the most contentious issues centered on the composition of the fund's board of directors. Critics argued that appointing political appointees, particularly those with close ties to the administration in power, would inevitably lead to cronyism and favoritism, with investment decisions driven by political expediency rather than economic merit. Instead, they advocated for a board composed of independent experts, selected based on their financial acumen, integrity, and experience in long-term investment management. Furthermore, experts stressed the importance of establishing clear investment guidelines and transparency mechanisms to ensure that the fund's activities were aligned with its stated objectives and subject to public scrutiny. This could include mandating regular audits, requiring public disclosure of investment holdings, and establishing an independent oversight board to monitor the fund's performance and adherence to ethical investment principles. Such measures, they argued, would be crucial for building public trust, mitigating the risks of political manipulation, and ensuring that the fund served the long-term interests of the American people. The debate over a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, far from being merely an academic exercise in economic policy, exposed a profound crossroads for American capitalism. For decades, the U.S. had championed a model of free enterprise, limited government intervention, and a reliance on private capital to drive innovation and economic growth. This model, while credited with fostering unparalleled prosperity and technological advancement, had also produced stark inequalities, left many Americans feeling left behind, and faced growing challenges from state-driven economic models abroad. The proposal for a US SWF, therefore, represented more than just a new investment vehicle. It symbolized a potential paradigm shift, a departure from the long-held belief that the government should play a limited role in the economy. Proponents, driven by a sense of urgency and a belief that the U.S. needed new tools to compete in a rapidly changing global landscape, argued that a strategically managed SWF could address critical infrastructure needs, invest in future industries, and ensure that the benefits of economic growth were shared more broadly. They pointed to the successes of other countries, particularly those that had leveraged SWFs to enhance their global standing, as evidence that the U.S. could no longer afford to cling to an outdated economic orthodoxy. Critics, however, warned against abandoning the principles that had long underpinned American economic success. They argued that a U.S. SWF, however well-intentioned, would inevitably become entangled in politics, subject to manipulation by special interests, and prone to the same inefficiencies and distortions that had plagued other government initiatives. They cautioned that by embracing state-directed investment, the U.S. risked undermining the very dynamism and innovation that had long been its hallmark, potentially leading to a less competitive and less prosperous economy in the long run. As the debate over a U.S. sovereign wealth fund unfolded, it became clear that its ultimate legacy, whether it materialized or remained a subject of contentious discussion, would extend far beyond the realm of economic policy. The very act of contemplating such a profound shift in the role of government had ignited a national conversation about core American values: the balance between individual liberty and collective action, the tension between free markets and government intervention, and the very definition of national interest in an increasingly interconnected world. At the heart of this debate lay a fundamental question about the kind of society Americans wish to build for future generations. Would they embrace a more activist government, willing to leverage its financial might to shape the economy, address social ills, and secure a competitive advantage in the global arena? Or would they hold fast to the principles of limited government, individual initiative, and a belief that the private sector, guided by the invisible hand of the market, remained the primary engine of prosperity and progress? The answers to these questions, far from being settled in the halls of Congress or the op-ed pages of newspapers, would be shaped by the choices of ordinary citizens expressed through their votes, their voices, and their engagement in the democratic process. The legacy of the U.S. sovereign wealth fund debate, therefore, would be woven into the fabric of American society, influencing the nation's economic trajectory, its political discourse, and its very sense of self for decades to come. The prospect of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund sent ripples of anticipation and apprehension through the global community, signaling a potential seismic shift in the global balance of economic power. The U.S., long the champion of free markets and a vocal critic of state-directed investment, seemed poised to join the ranks of nations that had embraced a more activist approach to managing their wealth and pursuing their strategic interests. This prospect carried profound implications for global trade, investment flows, and the very nature of competition in the 21st century. For some countries, particularly those that had long chafed at U.S. economic dominance and its advocacy of market-oriented policies, the prospect of a U.S. SWF was met with a mixture of irony and apprehension. They saw it as a tacit admission that the U.S., faced with mounting economic challenges and the rise of state capitalism, had finally recognized the limitations of its own model. This, they argued, could level the playing field, forcing the U.S. to compete on terms set by nations that had long embraced a more interventionist approach. However, it also raised the specter of a new era of economic nationalism, where countries increasingly retreated behind protectionist barriers and utilized their SWFs as weapons in a global battle for resources, market share, and geopolitical influence. For other countries, particularly those that shared U.S. values of democracy, free markets, and the rule of law, the prospect of a U.S. SWF sparked a mix of hope and uncertainty. They recognized the potential for such a fund, if managed responsibly and transparently, to address global challenges like climate change, poverty, and pandemic preparedness. A U.S. SWF, they argued, could provide much-needed capital for sustainable development projects, support emerging markets, and promote global economic stability. However, they also cautioned against the risks of politicization, opacity, and the potential for a U.S. SWF to become entangled in geopolitical rivalries, undermining its effectiveness and eroding trust in the global economic order. The debate over a U.S. sovereign wealth fund therefore transcended national borders, reflecting a broader global reckoning with the changing nature of capitalism, the role of the state in the 21st century, and the search for a new equilibrium in a world grappling with unprecedented challenges and uncertainties. The ultimate impact of this debate, whether it resulted in the creation of a U.S. SWF or not, would be shaped by the choices made by policymakers, business leaders, and citizens around the world. Would they seize the opportunity to forge a new era of global cooperation, leveraging the power of sovereign wealth for the collective good, or would they succumb to the forces of nationalism, protectionism, and zero-sum competition, ushering in an era of economic fragmentation and geopolitical rivalry? The answers to these questions, far from being preordained, would determine the shape of the global economy, the distribution of wealth and power, and the prospects for peace and prosperity in the decades to come. The future, as always, remained unwritten, its course charted by the decisions made in the present. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and share this video. Also, grab a copy of the Kindle book, Get Rich by Investing by Craig Smith. He's the CEO of the CRAIGTRADER companies and a longtime experienced investor with a finance degree. This book can help any level of investor become better and more professional. The link to get it is the first link in the description. Thanks for your support.